It was ACC Media Days yesterday, and the Field of 68 guys were there. Shout out to Goodman, RC, TO, Tyler Hansbrough. Great team over at the Field of 68 that's covering all these media days. And Pat Kelsey was at the podium. Pat Kelsey had a lot to say. He took us detailed through the joking or maybe not joking altercation between him and Mark Pope, and went in detail about what a fight would actually look like between these two. Talked about the Kentucky Louisville rivalry, but he also had a quote on recruiting that is maybe the most interesting thing I heard from any coach at any media day yesterday, especially when you take into consideration the context and the timing of this type of statement with the biggest recruit in the country, Tyron Stokes. So before I read this quote, let me just remind you what has happened in the last week, Dion. Reports have flown in that Tyron Stokes is going to commit to Kentucky. That's the expectation. As those predictions have come in, part of the intel on the nature of his recruitment is that Pat Kelsey did not make an all-in push for Tyron Stokes. In the final stage of this recruitment, after really prioritizing Tyron all along, when it got down to decision-making time, essentially Pat Kelsey and Louisville said, yeah, we're out. It's fine. We aren't going to go any further here. Now, we don't have all the details on that. It might have just been a price tag. Might have been a price point that Louisville said we're not willing to go down. But either way, that was the story. The story was as momentum grew for Kentucky, Pat Kelsey had a chance to basically stay involved. And Pat Kelsey and Louisville said, we're not going to push any harder. Okay, crystal balls to Kentucky. Now, fast forward to yesterday when Pat Kelsey said this in front of the Field of 68. And I encourage you to watch the full video of this. We're not going to play the audio because it was a little choppy when we tried to, but there's 30 seconds or so of Pat Kelsey giving a long answer on his recruiting priorities. Kelsey said, quote, "A leopard doesn't change its spots. It's hard to bring a selfish guy in and think you're going to change him from being selfish." End quote. Now, at the same time that Pat Kelsey's talking about we got to stay away from selfish players, there's intel coming out that other recruits don't want to play with Tyron Stokes at Kentucky. I don't know if I'm stretching or not. I believe that there's a pretty clear sequence here from Louisville saying we're out on Tyron to Pat Kelsey commenting publicly, a leopard won't change its spots a week later. Am I overreading this? Am I drawing a connection that doesn't exist? Or was this an exact quote about him backing off of Tyron Stokes?
I think it's a quote about him backing off of Tyron Stokes. I mean, there's too much. I feel like I don't want to believe all this stuff about Tyron because he's the number one player in the country. He's extremely talented. The football stuff is weird. Just let's just be honest about it. The football stuff is weird. But like, even when you watch him play football, clearly not very good. But it does showcase like how great of an athlete he is too, because you could throw him a jump ball and it's like good luck. If you're a DB, it's also kind of like good luck staying in front of him. Probably doesn't want to take many hits, but like you can see the athleticism is clearly there when you watch him play basketball. I believe he's the most talented player in the country. I believe he's like clearly the number one player in the country. I believe he's easily the front runner for a number one pick. I do believe he's a guy whose game is more transferable to the NBA than the college level. And I could understand some coaches having pause on Tyron because of that. I think there's other prospects that like will likely be better next year in college than Tyron. Um, but everything's there with Tyron. But there's so much smoke about some of the other elements of this that it's hard for me to believe this wasn't necessarily like a direct quote about it because I mean we did another short about players not necessarily wanting to play with Tyron earlier on the channel, and now we have this quote. I do believe that Kelsey just backed off because Tyron also backed off of Louisville though too. Like for as much as maybe what he's saying is true, the main reason Kelsey backed off the number one recruit in the country is because the number one recruit in the country said, "Hey, I'm okay." Like he backed off first. So the quote can be true, but it's both things can be true.
Dion, how's your job going?
Beginning of the school year, everything's like a little up and down. One of the biggest issues we've had is we can't find any uniforms for our girls' sports teams.
Mm, that's a difficult thing to find a solution for. I know damn well all about that because I got a daughter that just turned 2. She's into sports and she's already outgrowing every little piece of sports apparel she had. Thankfully, I know Clara Kate Creations. Clara Kate Creations was started by a former high school teacher who quit because it wasn't cost effective to send new twins and a 2-year-old to daycare. She found it easier to make girl sports apparel than finding it to buy. And I am so thankful that she exists because if we have an old shirt of Murph's that she's outgrown, we can send it in and she takes that piece of apparel that means something and upcycles it into an outfit that Murphy can now wear as she grows up. She makes great stuff. It's honestly kind of like your fullback's wife, Kyle Juszczyk. Is that how you say it? She does that. But honestly, I think Clara Kate's coming for Mrs. Juszczyk's job.
I love that. I'm a big Juice guy. Love his wife. Love Claire Kate even more than both of them, though.
You can send in your own custom ideas and she will come up with a design. She's just the best. Look up Clara Kate Creations on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and more. Yeah, this is Pat Kelsey. And by the way, before I say what I'm about to say, this is me in awe of what Pat Kelsey's doing here. This is not me dissing him. This is just me in awe of what he's been able to do narratively with this. He's showing his PJ Fleck colors here. I've always compared Pat Kelsey to PJ Fleck. Now, Kelsey's more successful at a bigger program than Fleck, but to me, they're the same guy. They're wired the same way. They are marketers. They can spin a 6-6 season into I'm the hottest coach in the sport because row the boat, because marketing, right? Point guard you. I got one recruit. I'm point guard you. Don't mind that I didn't get Tay Kinney because I got one. So we're point guard you. He always wins the podium. He always wins the podium. He never wins in the NCAA tournament. He always wins the podium. You wouldn't even know that Pat Kelsey's never won an NCAA tournament game when you listen to him at the podium because he's so good at the podium. What happened here, and I gave him credit for it a week ago. I gave him credit for reading the room here. He read the room. Tyron Stokes was going to go to Kentucky. Pat Kelsey figured that out and said, I'm out. I give him credit for that rather than showing up at Tyron's door 4 days a week trying to change that and waste his time. He just said, okay, this would be a waste of time to keep going. That's a skill set a good recruiter needs, is knowing when to back off. However, Pat Kelsey was prioritizing Tyron Stokes for years at this point, since he took the Louisville job, a year and a half, right? You can't prioritize a guy that long and then say, oh, he's selfish. What? Like that's no, you backed off of this once you got the intel that it was clear he wasn't going to choose you. To that point, like, Stokes and Kinney have kind of been the two together, right? These two that have quote unquote questions about how they're wired. Those were Pat Kelsey's two biggest targets. The number one and number two guys that he's been spending time on in this cycle are Tay Kinney and Tyron Stokes. He's going to end up with none of them. And yet he's going to end up marketing this as if, well, we don't want selfish guys in our program. It's a masterful piece of marketing. It's used car salesman 101. But it's just not all that fair. You desperately wanted the selfish guy. And now that he's going to choose Kentucky, he's selfish. And I don't think I'm stretching. I know sometimes I come on here and I stretch things. I don't think this is a stretch. Mark Pope saying, yeah, we can't change a leopard's spots. We're not going to make a selfish guy unselfish, and we stay away from those types. Saying that 3 days after it's reported you're stopping trying for Tyron, come on. Like that's as direct as you can be without just naming him by name. And if I'm a Kentucky fan, I would clown this quote. If I'm a Louisville fan, I'm like, hell yeah, coach. we missed on our biggest recruit, but it's because he's selfish. And we have a better culture than that. It's what makes Pat Kelsey, Dion. I think that's the only takeaway here.
Yeah, I mean, Pat Kelsey is always going to give you the quote that spins it, flip side correlation, as Cart would say. Pat Kelsey's the king of the FC. Cart's coming for his crown, obviously, but Pat Kelsey at the moment's the king of the FC. Eh, He's always going to make himself come out on top, and I do think that's part of the game as a head coach, right? Like part of the game, if you're not going to do it on the court, is you better do it off the court. And I'm not saying Kelsey isn't going to do it on the court too. They have a great team this year, but he had a first round exit last year. So what do you do? Oh, I got one 5-star. Cool, I'm point guard you, and everybody can just run with that, and it like kind of like gets the fan base pumped up. It's a lot harder, and I'm not saying Louisville would want to fire Pat Kelsey by any means with this comment. It's a lot harder to fire a coach that everybody loves than it is the Mike Woodsons of the world, right? Because like even when in with Indiana, like when Mike Woodson was about to get all them 5-stars, it was like, well, we kind of got to keep Woody. So you know what I mean? Like he has a way of spinning things in his favor amongst the fan base. That's job security. As long as you have that, that's extra job security for you with where you might have some struggles too.
100%. Yeah, I think that's a fair read. Again, just because I don't love it doesn't mean it's not his job. It is Pat Kelsey's job to get up there and spin things that go wrong as positives. And I genuinely don't know that there's a coach more resilient, more successful at spinning losses into positives than Pat Kelsey. Um, doesn't make them not losses. If Tyron Stokes chooses Kentucky, no matter how many ways Pat Kelsey tries to subtweet that he's selfish, it's not going to make me think Pat Kelsey won the recruitment. And he's still going to have to see him in blue when they play Kentucky Louisville. So we'll see. Very interesting stuff.